I've been doing my own routine maintenance on my Tacoma for over 5 years now, and I've learned a ton along the way. But one question I get asked a lot is it even worth it? I think this is a great question because yes, it can save you money, which is great in this economy, but it also takes effort, time, something I hear about a lot, and also a certain amount of skill. And truthfully, while DIY can be cheaper, sometimes it's not. The tools and space required can add up, especially if you're starting from scratch. So in this video, I want to walk you through some of the common routine maintenance items I do on my 2019 Tacoma. From engine oil changes to differential fluid changes, transfer case fluid changes, tire rotations, brakes, filters, spark plug changes, all the changes. Well, most of the common routine ones. We're not going to go through any big specific one-off items, but what I want to realistically show you is what it looks like to do these things at home, especially if you've never done them before. I'll also calculate the difference in savings by doing it at home versus how much my local Toyota service center charges, and ultimately how much I've saved on this truck DIYing at home for 5 years. My goal today is not to persuade you from one side or the other, because what makes sense for me per se may not make sense for you, and vice versa, and that's totally okay. I just want you guys to have the information, and honestly, I wish I had this information when I was first starting my maintenance journey to make the best call for your situation. Let's start out with the oil change, which is the most common maintenance item you'll find yourself doing since it's recommended every 10,000 miles for these Tacomas. However, I personally go in intervals of 5,000 because I am planning on keeping this truck forever, and I'm willing to eat double the cost on this simple item to make that happen. Well, simple, I thought. So today my odometer was at 85,000 miles. It was time for an oil change, and I thought we were gonna have an easy day because, you know, me and my Tacoma, we've done this many times before. So everything was fine as I drained the oil using a 14mm socket on the drain plug. I replaced my drain plug gasket and then torqued it down to 30 foot-pounds. Then I'm on to opening up the skid plate to drain the oil filter and replace it. Now, normally how this is done in a 2019 Tacoma is by removing this 3/8 inch drain cap and draining the remaining fluid out of the filter as shown. Simple enough, right? However, just as I thought I was on the precipice of a mess-free, easy day, I stripped the dang thing. Great, now I was both that dumb technician and angry customer, because what happens now when I remove the oil filter? Well, this. All I can say is that I did order a new plug, and this was my perfect excuse to also upgrade to the metal filter housing while I was at it. That being said, the new part didn't come for a couple days, and since it was a Sunday, I have work the next morning, I will have to wait until my next oil change to install that one. So I'm just using the existing plastic housing still and my strip plug, adding a new filter, and then screwing that thing back on. Now the torque on that should be 18 foot-pounds, but a lot of people just like to do it by hand. And then here I had the extra fun step of removing my oil-laden skid plate, which, you know, why didn't I just remove this before taking the filter housing out? I wasn't being my best and brightest this day, so can you really blame me? But yeah, as much as I'm face palming while editing this, seeing stuff like this is a real part of DIYing your own stuff. And honestly, you guys, this channel is not rooted in perfection, but just in reality. So sometimes these things take longer and have unexpected twists and turns. Just some food for thought. But anyways, the ugly part is over, so all that's left to do is pour 0W20 oil. You guys know I always use Haviland, and I find that even though the capacity is a little higher than this, a single 6-quart box gets my dipstick reading perfect. Okay, so now that this is done, how much did this cost? Well, a 6-quart box of oil is $28, and the OEM YZZ-A1 oil filter cost me about $7. If you're factoring in a new drain plug gasket, that's about $1, and comparing that to my local service center, they charge $110. So I am saving about $74 by doing it at home every single time. But I do want to say, if you didn't catch it, I do use some fancy tools like these ones from Motovix. I also bought a new filter housing, but these are just one-time purchases theoretically. So despite this, over time, I still think I save a ton doing this at home. It's relatively easy to DIY, and I truly believe that anybody could learn how to do this with the tools and space. Just remember to try not to strip things. And on to the next item, more fluid changes, but these ones have honestly been more friendly to me. And I'm talking about differential fluid changes. So starting out here in the rear, you're gonna see me lifting up the truck a little, keeping the tires on the ground. Sometimes I like to do this just so there's a little more room to work. And this overall process is very simple. But I will say, to avoid a potential catastrophe, always make sure to remove the fill plug using a 24mm socket back here before your drain plug. This will not only make sure that the oil flows smoothly out of the differential, but also reassures you that it can be removed. The last thing you want to do is drain your fluid and then realize you can't take out the fill plug and fill it. That'll make your truck a very expensive paperweight. And then here, I always check the drain plug for magnetic shavings. Now I'm putting about 4 quarts of my 75 W90 fluid in, and this is one way to do it. You can use a pump, but I do think this is a little tedious. So if you wait to see my transfer case change here in a minute, you'll see my more updated and efficient method. But overall, this is pretty straightforward, right? And the front diff fluid is pretty similar. Same process, just uses a 10mm hex for the drain and fill instead. You know, I wanted to mention an obvious benefit to doing maintenance at home is that you get the satisfaction of doing the work yourself, and you can know that it's done right or to your standards. However, you also don't get like the Carfax or any documentation beyond your own, so if you sell your vehicle, a buyer could reasonably question its maintenance history. So that's something just to think about. Now for me, it personally does not matter because this truck isn't going anywhere, or will it ever be sold to anybody. Sorry. Now if you have a 4x4, moving on to the transfer case is a similar deal. Although in my case, I have to remove some skid plates. So this is just one of those other little things to factor in you might not think about initially. So similar to the differentials, remove the fill plug first, drain out all the fluid. But notice unlike the previous clips, I am using these squeeze pouches instead. I personally find these much easier and less leaky than using a pump, which is nice because gear oil is pretty expensive these days. Okay, speaking of price, the grand total for doing this at home, since you'll need about 7 quarts of oil between the differentials and transfer case, and I'm paying about $13 a quart, that's $91 in total. But compare that to my local service center who charges $465 for all 3 of these services, which makes my savings a whopping $374. And I think that's insane. This is one totally worth doing at home, especially because I'd say it only takes me an hour to do all 3, even with skid plates on, and the difficulty level really here is easy. Easier than the engine oil change in my opinion. Now if you felt like that was easy to do, let me just say that changing your cabin air filter is a no-brainer for anybody, and I'm actually going to encourage you to take care of this one on your own because it is very straightforward and it can help improve the smell of your cabin. Literally, see how quick the whole process was? I feel like if you blink, you'll miss it. And changing the engine air filter is also very, very effortless as well. Now, bonus points for me because this TRD one is washable, so that means no buying a new filter every time. Okay, so for me, DIY cost is going to be $15 for a new cabin air filter and $0 for a new engine air filter. Compare that to $123 for getting those both changed out at a service center. Now, of course, I did make the one-time purchase of $55 for the TRD engine filter, and I bought a K&N cleaning kit for it. But even so, you still make it out on the positive end with very minimal effort. Now that kind of contrasts with our next service item, changing spark plugs. You guys might disagree with me, but honestly, my mind quivers a little thinking about changing spark plugs on these V6 Tacomas, but at least you only have to do it every 60,000 miles. But basically, to make a long story short, it's a bit of a process getting all of the coil packs out, then each spark plug out, especially on the driver's side of these trucks specifically. I do have a video where I go into detail about tips and tricks with how to remove these guys and what brackets and lines you can move out of the way in order to make your life easier. But what I truly think I struggle with most here is arm fatigue, as sad as that sounds, from reaching into the engine bay for an extended amount of time. If you're short like me, working for 2 to 3 hours on changing these guys out, maybe this is something to think about. At the same time though, it does pay to have small hands to work your way around the spaghetti noodles. Okay, so OEM cost of one spark plug is $15. Multiply that by 6 and I paid $90 for parts to do the service at home. Now that sounds like a pretty good price, and my service center doesn't actually advertise a price online, so I'm not quite sure how it compares, but doing some research, I'd estimate it would cost about $350 to $400 to get this done at the shop. I'm just gonna say, personally, with the effort factor here being pretty large, I don't think it's unreasonable to pay to have this one done. Just my 2 cents. Moving on to the next item, changing brake pads. Now, I've only ever needed to change my front brakes, so that's what we're going to be talking about here. And it starts by removing your wheel and tire, and while you're at it, it doesn't hurt to check your rotors for any imperfections. And then I use a pair of calipers to measure brake pad thickness. You can see on this particular day I did it, I was at 6 millimeters of thickness, which really doesn't warrant a change just yet, but if you're in the 3 millimeter or below, I'd say go ahead and change them. Anyways, I just remove the clips with needle nose pliers and I use vice grips to pull out those brake pads. Now, of course, the new brake pads are much thicker, so it looks like I used a pry bar to push on those pistons and just did my best to shimmy the new ones in. Obviously, brake dust is going to get everywhere, so using a pair of gloves would be my recommendation. So OEM brake pads are around 85 bucks, and I guess my service center quotes $486 to get this done. It looks like this service, to be fair, includes resurfacing the rotors, but yeah, pretty pricey. I think I save a ton doing this specific one at home. But be aware, doing this one at home, you'll also need a floor jack and jack stands, of course, which is also what you'll need for a tire rotation, which you should be doing every 5,000 miles. And my recommendation, do not sleep on that, because this is what causes uneven tire wear over time. Tires are very expensive and, in my opinion, can dramatically change how your vehicle rides, so yeah, take care of them. You all asked what floor jack I use, and it's a Pro Eagle 2.5 ton. It's super beefy for the garage, but it's also the one I bring to the desert because it's got big wheels and a skid plate, kind of like my Tacoma. I do agree it is overkill in this garage environment, but what I do like about it is that it has an extension, and I think that's important to remember because oftentimes these trucks, and mine as well, is lifted. If you also have oversized tires, your stock jack may not work. I like that the Pro Eagle's extension is removable because it allows me to use it in a variety of situations. But anyways, yeah, rotating your tires is a pretty straightforward concept. Swap the fronts with the rears, and sometimes people also crisscross, but you do have to be careful about whether your tires are directional or not. Also, a lot of people like to rotate their spares in. I do have a full-size spare, but the problem is that mine doesn't have a TPMS, so I choose not to rotate it in. And of course, always torque your lug nuts. 83 foot-pounds for the 3rd gens. Okay, so my cost to do this, technically free. There's no extra materials, but of course I did need a jack stand, and a torque wrench. Now, I do want to say at a service center, this is typically a free item. A lot of tire shops will offer this service at no cost to you. So I do actually think that for most people, taking your vehicle in for a tire rotation is just way more practical. Just make sure you always come home with all of your lug nuts. I've had a shop steal one on each one of my tire before, and that's not cool. Okay, this last one is sort of a bonus. I don't think it's on most people's maintenance list, but I'm going to include it because I've done it twice on my 2019, and I'm about to do it again since summer is around the corner. Now, over time, I'm sure you start to recognize that your car's AC doesn't smell as fresh as it did new, and sometimes just changing the cabin air filter doesn't do much. So the secret I figured out to do is your own AC cleaning. Now, this might sound intimidating, but all you have to do is take a cleaning detergent. In this case, I'm using Toyota's foam that comes with a tube. So you insert that into the AC hose and spray. That releases all the gunk. Yuck, but this is what seriously gets rid of that stale smell. And I always top it off by blasting the AC and spraying freshener to improve the smell even more, and that's it. So 20 minutes of your time. Cost for the OEM cleaning kit is $40, but compare that to something like $285 for this service. I think this is a must do at home. All right, so those were all the common service items I wanted to go through, and I wanted to end off with how much I think I've saved monetarily. I'm sure this number isn't exact, so it's just my best guess estimate, but I added up all the parts that I've purchased and multiplied them by how often I complete the maintenance item. Plus, I factored in the cost of tools I didn't already have to complete these items, and I calculated that I spent $1,142 in the last 5 years. Compare that to an estimated cost of $4,185 if I were to take it into the service center every time instead. And I did even factor in the free 25,000-mile Toyota Care. I am pretty surprised by this. It's almost 4 times cheaper to do at home. But of course, we can't really statistically capture the time and energy, which is a true cost as well. Let's just say I put a lot of sweat equity into this truck on maintenance alone. So regardless of your decision, I hope this video provided some insight and was helpful. So often I hear people say, well, the only reason I don't take my vehicle to a shop or the dealership to get work done is because I can know exactly what was done and how it was done and that it was done right. And I do think there is a lot of merit to that. But again, sometimes life gets the best of us. We get busy. We don't have the space. We don't have the tools. We don't have the time. It might just be worth it to take it in. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions for any maintenance items you saw in this video. If you have any requests for how-to videos when it comes to maintenance. Wow, I've said maintenance so many times in this video. But yeah, if you have any specific requests, how-tos, I can certainly make a video. Other than that, if you want to connect more with me, you can follow me on my Instagram. It is @ChloeKuoTaco. I am posting more in real time on there. Otherwise, I hope I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.